The house was silent when I walked in and it felt off. Usually I'd hear the television blaring or my stepson Liam on a call with his friends, but tonight there was nothing, just an eerie stillness that made the air feel heavier than usual. I set my keys down on the counter and noticed the faint glow of the living room TV spilling into the hallway. Curious, I stepped closer. There he was, Liam, sitting stiffly on the couch, his posture too perfect, too still. Something wasn't right. "Hey Liam," I said casually, trying not to startle him. His head snapped toward me, his eyes wide and almost guilty. My brows knitted together as I followed his panicked gaze to the screen. His fumbling hands moved quickly, trying to change the channel, but not before I caught a glimpse of what he'd been watching. For a split second, an image froze on the screen, intimate, suggestive, and utterly unexpected. My breath caught, but I quickly composed myself, crossing my arms as I studied his flushed face. "What's this about?" I asked, my tone light but probing. "Nothing," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's nothing." I raised an eyebrow, stepping closer to the couch. "Doesn't look like nothing." Liam's hands gripped the remote tightly, his knuckles white. He refused to meet my gaze. "I didn't think you'd be home so soon," he admitted, his voice cracking slightly, clearly. I sat down beside him, the leather cushions creaking under my weight. He shifted uncomfortably, his body language practically screaming for an escape. "Relax," I said softly, trying to ease the tension. "I'm not mad. I just want to understand." Liam's eyes darted to mine, wide and unsure. He hesitated, then looked away, his cheeks burning red. "It's nothing," he repeated, but the way he gripped the couch cushion betrayed his words. "Curiosity," I asked, my voice gentle. "What are you trying to figure out?" For a moment I thought he might actually open up. His lips parted as if to speak, but then he shook his head, the vulnerability slipping away as quickly as it had appeared. That night I couldn't get the encounter out of my head. Something about the way he'd looked at me, a mix of guilt, shame, and something else I couldn't quite place, stuck with me. I wasn't angry, I was concerned. When I went to tidy up the living room the next morning, I noticed the remote sitting on the couch where he'd left it. My fingers hovered over it for a moment before I gave in to my curiosity, navigating to the watch history. I scrolled through the list and there it was, the title bold and unapologetic. It wasn't just a movie, it was something far more personal, revealing a side of Liam I hadn't seen before. My heart sank. This wasn't just about curiosity, it was about loneliness, confusion, and maybe even desperation. When Liam came home that afternoon, I decided to confront him. "We need to talk," I said, my tone firm but not accusatory. His eyes widened and his shoulders tensed. "About what?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. I held up the remote. I checked the history. Liam's face turned a deep shade of red. You had no right to do that," he stammered, his voice shaking. "Maybe not," I admitted, "but I'm worried about you." "Liam, this isn't just about the movie, is it? There's something more, and I want to help." He froze, his eyes darting to the floor. For a moment it looked like he might shut me out completely, but then he sank onto the couch, his hands trembling in his lap. "You wouldn't understand," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Try me," I said gently, sitting down beside him. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." The words seemed to unlock something in him. Slowly, hesitantly, he began to speak. He talked about feeling isolated, about the pressure to fit in, about the questions he didn't know how to ask. His words came halting at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. By the time he was done, tears were streaming down his face. "I just don't know who I'm supposed to be," he admitted, his voice cracking. My heart broke for him. "Liam," I said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder, "it's okay to feel lost. Everyone does at some point. But you don't have to go through this alone." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and relief. For the first time, I felt like we'd truly connected, like he finally trusted me. In the weeks that followed, Liam and I grew closer. Our conversations became more open, more honest. He started asking me questions he'd been too afraid to voice before, and I did my best to answer them without judgment. But the closer we grew, the more complicated things became. There were moments, fleeting but undeniable, when the line between us seemed to blur, A lingering glance, a touch that lasted a second too long. I told myself it was innocent, that I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew better. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Liam turned to me suddenly. "Thank you," he said, his voice earnest, "for everything." I smiled, ruffling his hair playfully. "That's what family's for." But as he leaned back against the cushions, his gaze lingered on me a moment too long. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. The breaking point came one rainy afternoon. I was in the kitchen when Liam walked in, his hair damp from the downpour outside. He leaned against the counter, watching me as I worked. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked suddenly. I paused, caught off guard by the question. "What do you mean like you're stuck being what everyone else expects you to be?" he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "and you don't even know who you are anymore." I turned to face him, my chest tightening at the vulnerability in his eyes. "I think everyone feels that way at some point," I said softly, "but it doesn't mean you can't find your way back to yourself." Liam took a step closer, his eyes searching mine. "What if I don't know how?" My breath caught as the space between us seemed to shrink. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the intensity of his gaze. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Liam," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, "we can't." But before I could finish, he reached out, his hand brushing against mine. The touch sent a jolt through me, and I pulled back instinctively. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, his face flushing with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to." "It's okay," I interrupted, my voice trembling, "but we need to be careful, Liam. This can't happen." He nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I know. I don't know what to do with how I feel." That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my mind. The lines between us had been blurred for too long, and I knew I had to do something before things spiraled out of control. The next morning, I sat Liam down at the kitchen table. "We need to set some boundaries," I said gently but firmly, "for both our sakes." He looked at me, his expression a mix of sadness and understanding. "I get it," he said quietly. "I don't want to make things harder for you." "This isn't just about me," I replied. "It's about what's best for both of us. You're an incredible person, Liam, and you have so much ahead of you. Don't let this hold you back." He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for everything." As he left for work that day, I felt a bittersweet relief. The bond we'd shared had been intense, but it had also been unsustainable. Letting go was the only way forward. In the weeks that followed, Liam and I maintained a respectful distance.